Hi, welcome to the Ellis Talker Show. I'm doing one every day. There's all these candidates, and then there's all these issues. Today, I have a very special guest, MISD Board President, Miss Tami Tobey. How are you?
I'm great, DV. Thanks for having me here today.
Well, no, thank you for coming on. There's a lot going on at MISD. I had the superintendent on, and we talked bond, and I wanted to have your perspective on bond as board president, part of the board, and an elected person. Before we get into all that, there's a lot of new people here that may not know who Tami Tobey is. They better figure it out fast. Um, so, can you tell them about yourself?
Yeah, you're too kind, too kind. Well, my husband and I moved here about 20, it's going on 27 years this June. We have four boys that we've raised here in Midlothian, and they all attended and graduated from Midlothian High School. Three of those boys are in college. One's working here with my husband and I. We're thrilled about that. And then let's see, I have a little store that I do. It's an online store now. The big C came along and shut us down for a little bit, and then we just decided we would stay online. So I've got that going too. It's called ET Tobey Company, but my primary work is here at Tim Tobey State Farm Insurance. But I've been on the board now for 6 years. I did run for one more term, and praise the Lord for He is good. I got an unopposed position, so I'll be on the board for another 3 years. So
Wow. Yeah, I did see that you were unopposed this time. That is that's always a little bit, it makes it a little bit better there. You get to, go on and serve the community. Are you going to continue to be a board or board president, or once you get back, they're going to vote on somebody else?
well, the way that works, the process is that we will, when we swear in the new board members, we will discuss. I think we go into closed session either before or after to discuss everybody's desires, and it's kind of considered a oh gosh, an HR thing because we may talk about each other's qualifications and things that we've done. And so
No.
that happens in closed session. And then we come out and we nominate folks for those different positions. So it's a possibility. Our board operating procedure says that any officer can serve. We have term limits of 2 years right now. And so it's a possibility to serve one more term. But we really like to, one of the things we've tried to invoke at the district and administrative level is really just getting people ready to continually move up into basically continuous improvement cycles. So that's one of the things we kind of want to lead by example in doing and try and prepare others to sit in these seats and to serve in these roles. And so I don't know. That'll be up to the entire board. We'll have that discussion in May.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. You've been leading this board for now, what, 2 years?
I've been the president now for 1 year.
For 1 year, you've been leading this board. Can you talk about some of the things that you're proud of in this last term?
Oh yeah, there's a lot. How much time do we have? Remind me.
Yeah, I'll go 30 minutes. We'll go 30 minutes.
We I'm very proud of how engaged this board has been. They've really taken everything that we presented, kind of taken the bull by the horns. We've had some really good training that we received through Moat Casey to talk about kind of the team building and then the trust factor. And that's hugely important in the job that we do. Not just our trust among each other, but also the trust that we garner with our administrative team. And so we've done some really incredible work there and made huge progress in the way this board operates. And I'm very proud of that. That takes a team effort and it takes engagement by every single person on the board. And that's what makes a board great is you have everybody comes with their strengths and weaknesses. And what we really want to do is just focus on utilizing everybody's strengths and then building them up in their weak areas so that we can perform for the community at the best of our ability. We've also gotten more engaged in advocacy. This year, we took a trip to Washington, D.C. just to see kind of what goes on at that level. And that was very enlightening. The whole board has been really good about all their trainings and even going above and beyond. I think this is the first time in as long as I've been a board member in the 6 years I've been here that this is the first time that every single person went to the Summer Leadership Institute down in San Antonio. And that was not only was the training beneficial, but really just the team building that we got to do with each of our team members. and it was awesome. And I couldn't be prouder of how, like I said, the board is operating and how we're growing ourselves, because that's, if we want our administrative team to grow, we've got to set that example. And so I think we've done a really good job of that this year, this team.
I did see that you did go to DC, and I mean, that's got to be pretty amazing to see that. I haven't had a chance to go. Definitely want to go.
Yeah.
So, in the last, I watched the budgets, I watched the taxes, and the discussion on taxes. So I wanted to get kind of into taxes, and eventually we're going to roll into bond, but I wanted to get into taxes. So there was discussions about no new revenue rates, different rates. There was different rates that were being thrown, things that you were considering. The finance guy, I even had him on, and they talked about the numbers. And what are your thoughts on how you've handled taxes in the last, since you've been on this board, and especially as president? Because there are a lot of people concerned, and you being the biggest chunk of taxes, there are people concerned about their mortgage going up and the taxes really eating away, and them maybe having to move from this wonderful community. So can you speak on that?
Sure, absolutely. And that's one of the things that keeps me personally awake at night. And I know several of the other board members, the discussion was lengthy and it was deep. For me, the thing is we definitely want to be mindful. And the only way we can do that is to keep an eye on our spending. I know it was one of the things that was proposed by one of the representatives was the no new revenue. The thing is, think about, let's say your home life, and let's say you're pregnant with twins, or your family, because I've been there. So this is maybe I could relate it to families, but you're pregnant with twins and they're coming, and that there's going to be expenses related to that, and that you're going to have to provide for those new kids. Same thing with the school district. We are growing leaps and bounds. And it wouldn't be very good of us to pass a budget that wouldn't allow us to pay for our current indebtedness, which what was presented to us by our finance people was the fact that no new revenue would not allow us to pay all of our current expenses. And so that's one of the reasons we moved off of that. But we do try to consider everything in the budget. And I do want to point out again, and I've done this a couple of times, but I do believe that even at admin, because that's one of the things we said, we've got to be the ones. It's a top down. And at admin, I think they cut like 17 positions to the tune of maybe $700, maybe $800,000. I'm sorry, I didn't bring the budget stuff. I don't have it right in front of me, DV. I mainly brought the bond, but
that's fine.
We started at the top, and we are going through the process of making sure that we can, have the efficiencies at every level. But that does take time in an organization of our size. But I was very proud of our admin team for taking that initiative and saying, hey, we're going to set the example. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to work harder and we're going to work more efficient, because we're probably going to have to ask people to do the same thing if we're going to continue to not raise the taxes. And, I know we've got a history. We've lowered them. A lot of times that is the state mandated. But, this year it wasn't all fully state mandated. We chose not to take the full rate. The other thing is, a lot of people don't realize that Midlothian ISD, we take 10% off of your home value off the top. And there's very few districts in Texas. And I know back when we were looking at the tax rate, when I looked, the districts that the other districts that do allow that 10%, their rates were all much higher than ours, their tax rate. Mm-hmm. So not only have we kept the rate low, but we still are giving that 10% off the top of your home value, which to me is pretty big, because, you can keep the rates the same, but if the home values continue to go up, you're still going to see an increase. And, those home values aren't anything that we can control. And depending on where you're at, if you're living in your house and paying the taxes, you want them as low as possible. But if you're ready to sell your house, you want that value as high as possible. So it's, it's a catch-22. we want this to be a great place to live. We want this to continue to be the place that people want to come and educate their children. Because, before I got on the school board, I worked with the economic development, the 4B board. I think it's the community development board is what it's called now. And it was very apparent to me, even before working on that board, just in my business, that the school is the economic driver here. And so, we're in a position where we have to keep the schools excellent in order to keep Midlothian a thriving community. And again, that's a catch-22. We've got to provide the services that people are coming here for. And again, I understand the feeling of those who've lived here a long time. It's hard when those taxes keep going up. And it's not so much the rates, it's the values. We've seen a huge increase in the values. So
yeah, and there's some serious structural issues. I've said this on the other interviews that I've had in Texas when it comes to taxes, and they're arguing about that right now in the legislative session.
yeah.
Do you think that in your time in the board,
Pardon
that's fine. In your time on the board, do you think that you have tried to be a good steward of the taxpayer money?
Absolutely. Now, what I will tell you is that's a lot easier done when you have a board that is working together and collaborating. And that's one of the biggest things in the last year that I have seen. One of the things we're doing, in having different strengths and weaknesses on the board, you have different personalities too, and everybody has a different need for levels of information. And after being on the board for 6 years, I kind of get how some of these processes work. But some of the newer people, they haven't had the 6 years experience, and so they're still digging. And I love the fact that we've started these committees. So if you're interested and you really want to get in the weeds about our finances, you can be on our finance committee. And if you want to dig in the weeds more about the curriculum, you can be on that. So everybody kind of has chosen their desires or their strengths, or where do they want to really dig into the issues. And we've been able to get on these committees so that we can spend more time as trustees digging into the questions that we maybe don't understand, or the processes that we're just getting to know. And again, I think it's building that trust relationship between all of us even more. And not only that, it's building up people's strengths even more. And then, some people they're like, hey, I'm a finance person, I'm going to go over to curriculum. And so they're not only enhancing their strengths, but they're building up areas that they think they're weak in or that they don't understand. And so that's been really great for us as a board to dig deeper, and also, to ask for those efficiencies. If I think, that there should be money cut from the budget on certain things, I can go to those committee meetings and say, hey, why do we do this? Explain this process a little better. Where it doesn't, at one time we were having board meetings that lasted into the wee hours of the morning. And so those committee meetings give us a chance to really dive in and dig in as individual board members and understand those things even better, so that we ask better questions and we understand the processes even more.
Who can be on these committees?
It's subcommittees of the school board.
Okay.
Yeah, subcommittees of the school board. So like we have a curriculum committee, we have a finance committee, we have a governance committee that's made up of the 3 officers, and that digs into more the processes and the policies that are going to come to the board. And most of that comes through TASB updates and such. But yes, I think that's all of them. I think we also have, after this year, we are going to keep a calendar committee. So
Calendar committee. Okay.
yes, because I do think that's going to be something that will be, every year we're going to have to revisit and look at, ways to best utilize our teachers and their time and give them the planning time that they need to be prepared for these kiddos, so that they're not at home putting in hours way beyond the school day. So
Tami, that was a big issue. People were talking about that
yeah.
schedule. There was a lot of unhappy people, and there were people that were like, yeah, this is great. Can you kind of give a 30,000 foot overview before we go rolling into the bond about how that went down and your
Sure.
thoughts on it?
Sure. Well, originally the thought process, I think, from the admin team, because we weren't, I'll be honest, the board wasn't completely aware of the fact that the survey was going out, but that wasn't anything that upset or caught us off guard, or at least not myself, because that's something that they do without our approval, just to get insight on how they spend their time more efficiently. Because had they put a survey out and there was no interest in a 4-day week, they would have been wasting time researching it had it not been something the community wanted. So they decided to go put, and some people think this was the wrong way to do it. I'm not going to judge because I'm not in those seats, but they put the survey out to gauge interest. And the unfortunate thing is, I do believe that since COVID, the surveys in a lot of people's minds are almost like votes. Like, if you survey me and we say this, this is what we do. And in reality, that's not how surveys are normally utilized, at least not from the school perspective, the ones that we've done in the past. We do want input and feedback from our constituents. But so a 30,000 foot view for me as a board member, I really didn't have enough information that told me that a 4-day week was truly the best thing for academic outcomes for our students. As much as I am an advocate, and I'm the whole reason I do this position is a pay it forward for teachers, because they were hugely pivotal in my life. In the seat that I sit in, the first priority for me, is it what's best for children? And I'll tell you the other thing that weighed into my decision. I know it was like and I'm going to pull numbers out that are not right, so don't hold me. But let's say I think it was like a 70% wanted the 4-day and 35 or something didn't. And what it came down to, because I talked to numerous folks, got numerous emails and texts, and what it came down to for me was the 65 to 70% that wanted the 4-day. It was, they were, it's the typical, man, we would love to have an extra day with our kids to engage, have an extra, a 3-day weekend. The 25 to 30% that didn't want it, their thing is, this is our livelihood. This will crush our family. I don't know how we're going to do it. Like, people in tears and just like, their life's going to be destroyed. And that was what really was hard for me. It's like, are we going to give a vacation day and then destroy lives? To me, it made the gap even larger. And honestly, the administration just said, listen, we do not have enough time to fully vet this out. I think what the admin team came up with was a great compromise. You hear they're already talking about the state legislative level possibilities of outlawing it altogether, or I haven't watched that closely, but I know there were some bills introduced that were going to just do away with it altogether. So I don't know how that's going to turn out. What I want to see is, does this help our kids? And I'll tell you the other thing, as a lay person and not as an educator, like, I don't ever claim to be the education specialist, right? That's where we trust our administrators and we allow them the autonomy to do what we've hired them to do. They've been schooled in this and they've done it for years, most of them. But for me as a lay person, one of the first things I learned about when I got on the board 6 years ago was this thing called summer slide, and it was the frustration with teachers. The kids come back from summer and we spend X number of days or weeks reteaching. And then we heard about COVID slide and COVID gaps. And how much money the federal and the state government has spent on going in and taking care of those gaps. So for me, it's kind of a double speak to now say, oh, but now it's good for kids to have a 3-day weekend every single week. And so, that was a few of the things that went into it for me, just some things that didn't completely add up. And, a lot of people feel like they're like, well, Midlothian's quite affluent. I wouldn't think that would have a huge effect on people. But one of the things we fail to recognize is that this is probably very touchy, but negligence, abuse, all the things that we see happening to kids, it is not the affluent can have those same issues, is all I'm saying. And we see kids across the spectrum. I would love to say that, every single kid has an amazing home life and wonderful parents, but as well as I do, that is not true. And another one of those fine balances that we have to do as a school and as an ISD is we have to serve both of those. We have to serve the child that comes in every day needing love, affection, food, you name it. And we also have to still meet the needs of those who are, They're top of class. They have all their needs met at home. They are fully loved, fully clothed, and all the things. And so that's another fine balance that we're asking our educators to do. And it's not easy. It's very difficult. And I feel for what our teachers see in their classrooms every day. So
If you're okay, I'd like to go a little longer on the show, just a little bit, because I
cool.
wanted to ask you one more question before we went into the bond. I saw a comment, and I know the internet is not everything, Facebook is not everything. There's real life, but there was a parent who posted on Midlothian Talk, and in desperation for something other, because they had seen videos from Frank Seal, I believe, and they did not want their kid in there, and it was bad. And there were several posts like that it were saying it was terrible. There's serious problems going on there. She was in desperation, like, how could I
Mhm.
homeschool now? I got to get my kid out of there.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that post, but can you speak on that? On, do you know of any issues on Frank Seal, or is that something you're going to look into? Or
Well, I don't think I saw the post, but it doesn't surprise me. Through the 6 years, they're, parents, these are their babies. These are their babies. And, when they're desperate, they'll go to social media. And I wouldn't be opposed to doing the same thing if I wasn't getting answers. But honestly, we as school board members, um, when we see things like that, we make sure our administrative team sees it. And the more of those that come up and we see, the more we're going to send it to our admin team, and we're going to try to hold them accountable, because, we're not at the schools in the day to day. We're
Mhm.
there 2, 3 times a month at most for committee meetings and other kinds of meetings. And so we usually will forward that, because that is what we have them in place for. They have got to take care of those. And if we see those over and over again, that is something that basically the only person we can hold accountable as an administrator, as a board, is our admin team and ultimately our superintendent.
Mhm.
And so I do know that those are out there, and they've been, even I've seen them before at even other campuses. But when there's multiples of those, it's usually going to get some attention from our admin team. And I will tell you, it's usually relatively quick. And the reason we as board members can't get involved, DB, just so you know, kind of the legal side, because I know a lot of people will send us things and they're like, well, what are you doing about it? And I'm like, oh, I'm working insurance by day and a store by night, and I really want to do a good job for you, but I really, my calling is to allow the folks that are in those positions to do their job. And if they're not doing their job, that then is the work of the HR department or superintendent. Which I'm just going to tell you, there's lots of changes, and a lot of people are like, oh, everything's changing, people are leaving. And aren't you worried about that? And yes, I am worried about having great teachers leave. But I also know that sometimes there just comes a time that people need a change, right? I've been there, and I've done that a few times in my life. And I'm not saying that's the course for everybody, because I've seen some amazing teachers that just, it wrenches my heart. But the things we're seeing are kind of across the board. This isn't just a niche that's happening in Midlothian. This is happening nationwide, statewide, that teachers are just, they're burnt out. We're asking them to do too much, honestly. We're asking them to almost be parents to some of these children at school, which, don't get me wrong, teachers love providing that emotional and support for these children. But just think, if you have 23 of those in a room and 10 of them need that, that's that's overwhelming, and it's very, very difficult to teach children who have other needs emotionally and otherwise. And so yeah, the thing we have to tell people, though, is they've got to go up that chain of command. It's got to go through a process, and there's a process called the grievance process. So if they go to their administrative team and they do not like the answer, or if they are not getting the results that they want, they have a grievance process, and it's online. Level one, you would have a meeting with probably the principal and whoever, the teacher or whoever's involved at the school level. They will give you an outcome or options for solving whatever the issue is. And then if you aren't happy with that, it can go to a level two, which would be the admin team. And then level three, it comes to the board. So that's why the board has to remain outside of that scope, because at the end of the day, at the level three, the board has to judge whether or not the processes were followed, they were given appropriate fixes to whatever the problem was. And so we kind of get to act like almost like the ultimate jury at the end. And so we have to remain outside of that loop until it actually comes to us during the grievance process, because we even have attorneys there and they oversee the whole proceedings. But that's the process that goes on when there's things like that happen.
Yeah.
And I wish I could jump in and advocate. But unfortunately, legally, I can't do that, because if it came to a grievance, then I would have to say, I've been involved from the very beginning and I've been advocating for this family, and now I can't be one of the jurors. Basically, I have to abstain. So,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. That removes you from that.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you addressing that. I wanted to go ahead and go into the bond,
Mhm.
because that's the talk of the town.
Yeah.
The bond is it's over $400 million,
Mhm.
and people are kind of concerned about that. Some people are like, hey, we need it for the schools. And so I wanted to speak with, I spoke with Dr. Fay, and I wanted to speak from a board's perspective with the board president about it. So I appreciate you coming on with that. But the bond is like $400 million, and it addresses some things like schools and stuff. Can you talk about the process that went into that real quick, and then we'll start looking at numbers?
Yes, absolutely. So let me just say this first of all. Before I ever got on the board, I was involved in several growth management committees, and they all were run very differently. And I'll be even more honest, there were ones I did not vote on. And not only because of what they asked, but because of that process. And there have been processes that I've gone to where you go to the meetings and you're like, wait a minute, we didn't have input. We didn't. This is what they want, and they basically want us to stamp our name and say, hey, we approve and let's move forward. I mean, I've been there and done that. I'm not going to say in the last 6 years, but that's been a process before. I've talked to several who were on this committee, and they all said this was completely a grassroots thing. They were presented with the needs that we have. Our demographer gave their reports, and the tables all had input into what they thought the priorities were. I tried not to attend any of those meetings. I attended one of the very, very last ones just to see a summary of what was going to be presented. But I specifically tried not to be involved because I didn't want to have the information before the rest of my team had it. And I was looking forward, honestly, to the presentation afresh like everyone else. But I love that so far, almost every single person I've talked to loved the process. And they truly felt like they had a part in putting together the list that came before the board. And so that was a refreshing thing for me right off the bat. They engaged, I think it was 135. I've got the list here somewhere. 135 members. And I think even in the meeting, we asked, I think Miss Ward asked about attendance, and the attendance was fabulous. I've also been in some of those meetings where you go to the first 2 or 3 and the attendance is great. And then it wanes off to where you basically have a lot of administrators there and a couple of community members. But the attendance numbers we got looked great. So to me, that says that this was a great vetting of the entire community across the board. And there were some people in there that didn't agree with everything that came forward. So I'm always a huge proponent of, get your largest antagonist to the table, right? Let them have a say. Let them have input. And so hopefully that was done too. And that way we do get to hear from everybody. But one of the things I did love about this when it came forward was it's pretty much needs based. Every once in a while you'll have a bond proposal and it'll have some things in there that are not people are like, yeah, is that really a need? These things, as you can see on here, most of these things were vetted by that committee and were truly found to be needs. Like, these are what we need for the next, few years to sustain the growth that is coming to Midlothian ISD. Proposition B was the storm shelters, and that was just a question of equity. That was not a part of what we had to do several years ago, is put in storm shelters with new schools. So in an effect to make it equitable, there were, there's 5 schools that do not have storm shelters. And yes, that's a lot of money. And I just tell people, that's a personal decision. If you, whatever price you can put on child safety with regard to tornadoes, that's just a personal, decision for you. I can't I can't be a proponent for yes or no on either of them. I'm here to just present facts, and as a school board president, that's really all I can do. And I can kind of just share with you what I like about this process, though, and how it came to the board.
So that's and that's fine. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Okay.
I wanted to go ahead and look at this. So Prop A is $356 million, right?
Hmm.
And it's the two new elementary schools,
Yes.
and then we got a CT center, land acquisition. Now these renovations,
Yes.
is that something that the school staff has spoken to you about what that looks like? I know I had Dr. Fayon, like I said earlier, and she kind of touched on these renovations. Did they discuss that with the board?
They didn't discuss in detail what the renovations were. I, for one, didn't ask any questions on that because my kids attended most of those campuses, and I can tell you they have been in need of renovation for quite some time. And when you talk about, being equitable, a lot of these new middle schools and elementaries, there are lots of things they have that these older ones just don't have the ability to do. And I know your heart is all for, like, sped kids. We've talked about that before. There are some things that have come up in the last 5 to 10 years that we need to provide on every campus. And so that will probably be a part of some of those renovations, because in order to give these kids the education they need on just their daily living activities and things, we are going to need to make some changes. And to me, it's not super equitable when you have half your campuses that have it and half that don't. And so there's lots of little things like that, DV, that, like, again, it's an equitable thing, because you're giving certain kids an education that includes certain things, and then these other campuses don't have those. And not only that, but space. I know that space was also taken into consideration because of the growth, so that we can make these campuses more equitable in the way of numbers as well.
Right. And it's there's a lot of growth planned, or a lot of growth coming, and there's a lot of rooftops coming,
Mhm.
so new schools and renovations. But I was just wondering if you kind of got into the weeds about what those renovations entailed. And then we go into C, and that's $11 million for athletic improvements. Do you see that as a good cost? Well, I'm sorry, there's only certain things you can answer, but can you talk on Prop C?
Well, I mean, it is something, again, to me, it's an equity thing. And if that's what we're supposed to be about this day and age, that, again, it is one of those things that those certain campuses have it and others don't. Now, for me, you have to also draw a line somewhere on where that equitability becomes outlandish. You know what I'm saying? You're never going to make in Midlothian High School equal to Heritage. Heritage is a building that is 50 years younger. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of
Mhm.
things that just can't be brought to the same level just because of when it was built. But as far as some of these things, a lot of people consider these equity issues. And again, I've told lots of people, these are, again, just facts. Prop A does not raise the rate. And then if you did Prop C, it wouldn't either. But throwing in the Prop B in the middle there, that increases it because it goes beyond our bonding limit. And so a lot of people were like, "Well, I'm only going to vote for what doesn't raise my taxes." And from what I've got presented here and what was presented at the meeting, Prop A and C even together would not do that, but Prop B would. So.
So, there's talk with the legal language on these bonds, and I'm covering WISD bond too
Mhm.
next week. And there's talk about the legal language, and that this is going to be a tax rate increase, and that you can raise the rate at to any proportion to try to pay for this bond. Can you kind of speak on that, because that's posted often online?
So I missed the last part of what you said. Something about online.
Yeah, the tax rate legal language, when they say they can raise the taxes up into, however they need to in order to pay this bond. So I kind of wanted you to speak on that, because that's posted often.
Well, from what I understand, this is based on current what we've got. Every single year when we do a budget, we have to also approve a rate, right? And usually that rate is going to be based on whatever debt we have and the growth. So every single year, there's an opportunity for us to raise our rates. Now, what I'm going to tell you about this bond, it would not behoove us to go and pull something like that because we will probably need more schools in another bond in the next 5 to 10 years. I mean, I'm just speculating, but people are going to be watching. And if that's the case, you talk about trust and lack of it. I don't think that is something that I don't think it would be a good thing for a board to do. Now, there are going to be things that come up, though, that I can't promise you we won't raise the rate. We can't foresee what the future holds. I wish I had a crystal ball and I could say, DV, as long as I'm on this board, that's not happening. Unfortunately, there are 7 of us, and there is a lot of information. And as you know, the culture right now, things change as quick as we sneeze. And so I will tell you that we will continue to be prudent with people's tax dollars. We will be prudent in evaluating everything that comes before us. And, you know, one of the things, again, that through the bond process, we have to build is trust with our voters and with our constituents. And the fact that when we pass a bond, we're going to do what we said we were going to do with that money. And if we don't, then we deserve the distrust. But at the same time, I will be 100% honest with you. All the things that go into a tax rate, most of them we don't control. We control our budget, we control our spending, but we don't control a lot of things like inflation. Or, you know, there's other things that go into all that. But what I will tell you is that as a school board, the current people on there right now, we are going to be diligent in spending people's money as efficiently as possible and trying to keep that tax rate as low as we possibly can. But we're not going to pass a budget that tells us we can't meet all of our obligations.
Right.
That's
And
just not prudent. You and I wouldn't do that with our household income either.
no, I'm running out of time, but I wanted to ask you, that adds to the current debt on the school, and you know the school's got a bit of debt, and you know, do you have concerns about adding, you know, $400 million on top of what is currently there, and going forward?
Well, once if the bonds get approved, we would only issue those bonds when we could afford to make those decisions. And that bond debt going up went into the calculations that they gave us as far as the debt. Again, there are a lot more things that go into a budget. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you, than just the bond debt. You've seen our budget.
Yeah, yeah, I've looked at it.
And so, but I currently that is not our plan.
Yeah.
Our plan is to, if this passes, you see the things on there, that's what those monies will be spent for. We
And
have to do that. We're legally obligated to.
okay. And
But
then
again, they won't get issued. Those bonds don't get issued until it's time, or we feel like it's, you know, appropriate timing to issue those bonds, because we don't want to go build a school when we don't have enough kids to fill it, because then we won't have money to put teachers in it. It's a, you know, it's all a balancing act, and the timing is critical as well.
and you know that I didn't know that you can, well, you can time these bonds. I've kind of learned that a little bit. So, you know, it doesn't all come at once. But, you know, unfortunately, we're running out of time, and I wanted you to get kind of a closing statement and, you know, something on the bond. But before I go into that, obviously there was a tragic shooting in Nashville,
Oh,
and those poor babies were killed. Again, we talk about this. So I talked with Dr. Faye, and she kind of gave an overview. There's things you can't talk about, but are you satisfied with the answers you get when you ask about security of them babies?
from the local level, yes. I have no doubt that the teachers and administrators at each of our campuses are, that's their top priority. I think any one of them would lay their life down for our children. I mean, I haven't met a single person employed here that I don't think would actually do that. My frustration is with, and I don't know if this is state and federal or both together, but you know, a lot of the shooters are either students or former students. And the unfortunate thing is our hands are tied as to, even when we identify someone in our system, our hands are tied by legislative issues and legal issues. we might think we've identified somebody that could do something. And honestly, we have to educate them. We have to educate them right alongside every other baby in that school. And that's one of the things that I feel like, you know, our legislatures can keep throwing money at us to try to do these safety and security initiatives, and I think that's great. I'm never going to say that doesn't help, but we need help with how to help these children that we identify with needing more assistance. And I'm just telling you, teachers should not be counselors. They should not be psychologists. They should not be required to do those things. And I just think that sometimes we try to do too much. And you can't do everything well if you're doing too much. And so I think at the local level, yes, I'm very happy. I think our state and federal government can do more to help us protect our babies for sure.
Definitely. Well, I appreciate you talking about all those other issues and the bond, which is what I had you on. I just had to tap your brain, Miss Tobey, so you could talk to the people of Midlothian, the parents of Midlothian ISD. So I wanted to go ahead and let you kind of have the mic and talk about, going forward and the bond and whatever it is you want to tell the people.
Well, I'm very proud of this proposal. I am happy with the way it came forward to us. I think it gives people good choices. And if they have questions, there's a great place on our website you can go to. I just want to say, I guess this is off the rails. It's not about the bond, but just to be kind. I was telling you earlier, I think it's unfortunate that we have become a society that's so quick to cancel one another and attack each other. And I think we need to start showing our children at the adult level at every stage, and especially on social media, how to act as adults and how to disagree and collaborate and try to come to resolution without destroying people. I just think that's unfortunate that is so much of what goes on right now on social media. I've never been more thrilled than to be unopposed for that reason. And I pray for all the candidates out there. It is a tough season, but it will pass. And may the best ladies and gentlemen win. And just remember, all these people that put their name out there, they want to do good and they want to serve you, the people. And I don't think one of them comes into this with malice. That's just my opinion, and maybe I'm naive, but I think every one of them comes with a servant's heart. And so I think you do your due diligence. You get to know the candidates. I love that you put us on a forum like this because I feel like you get to see people's personalities and maybe a little bit of their heart when they come onto the show. And I appreciate that very, very much. I do.
Thank you. That means a lot. I try to do this for the community. I make no money on this. I actually spend money, and my wife's getting ready to wring my neck on it. But there would be very little access to you guys, or at least be able to see you on a forum if I didn't do this, and some other folks in town weren't doing this. So I appreciate you coming on and answering the questions.
Sure. No worries. God bless you.
God bless you too. You take care.
You too. All right.